In a world covered by endless night, in a place where fear and despair thrive, in a time when all hope seems lost, two individuals arise to stand firm, resist the darkness, and light the beacons of hope to humanity. To the free people of the future, the courage of these two will mark them as heroes. To everyone else, they will simply be known as Nobodies.
Thanks for tuning into Nobodies. I'm Dave. This is Brian.
Hello, everyone.
And this is just two nobodies talking about nothing. Topics that you obviously don't care about. So today we're talking about immigration, but specifically what's going on in Europe, the European situation right now. We're just going to give you a quick overview and just kind of, just chat about it. So, you want to start off? Or what's going on? What's happening?
Yeah, so Middle East is completely destabilized, go figure, right? And now we've got a bunch of people fighting each other, and then, of course, civilians who just want to get out of the way. So where are they fleeing to? Well, the closest, safest place would be Europe. But, of course, there's also another caveat to that. I mean, I don't want to sound condescending, but Europe also has very, very generous public goods. So if you're going to go escape to somewhere that's going to be safer, and you've got some place that's offering you free stuff...
Free money.
So, yeah, put two and two
Why
together.
not?
Obviously, where are you going to flee to? Europe. So now we've got a bunch of refugees fleeing towards Europe. So, in case you've been living under a rock, that's what's going on for, months?
A good chunk of the year. I remember reading about it early in, I think January. Well, this has been going on for a while. I just started reading about the hundreds of thousands this year, but it's been going on for a little bit.
Right, but this year is when it started really escalating.
Yeah, this year.
Yeah.
This is the beginning of this year. It's ridiculous. We're talking about millions. This isn't, the border with the United States and Mexico, there's a lot of people crossing that border, okay? Times that by 1,000. I mean, this is a lot of people. And they're coming by sea, and they're coming by land. I haven't heard anything in the air, but they're hopping in boats, and these boats are capsizing. People are dying. They're crossing by the land. It's dangerous. There's bandits, especially now with the winter up there in certain areas. It gets freezing cold. Just not something you want to do. Plus, the place that you're leaving, it's war-torn. So, I don't know. You can't blame them. I don't blame them. I mean, if you lived in a war-torn nation, and there was somewhere that you could go that would give you free everything, I mean, why not?
Yeah, of course.
So, yeah, I'm not going to sit here and rail against them and how terrible it is, because you can't blame them. You really can't blame them.
Absolutely.
Very generous welfare.
It's just basic survival instinct. I mean, if we were in a complete war-torn country, I'd want to flee here, and if, Canada's got free healthcare, right? So, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty sure, most of us would do the exact same thing in the exact same situation. But, of course, there are repercussions to this, and that's what we're here to discuss.
Mm-hmm. I mean, when you have that many people coming in at one time, and let's just face facts here. Europe is a very liberal area. You've got many countries in Europe. You've got France, you've got Germany, Greece, Italy, whatever. They're very liberal. I mean, when I went to Germany, there were topless women on billboards. I mean, that's just, and topless sunbathing in parks. That's just their culture. I was about it, whatever, okay, that's your thing. But people coming from the Middle East, that is a very, very big no-no. That is a no. So the problem is you have millions and millions of people coming into an area where that kind of stuff to them is just completely unacceptable. You are in for a large culture clash, and we can kind of already see it. I mean, there's a lot of problems right now. I think I was talking to you about Sweden. Sweden is number 2 in the world. Let me look it up for rapes. Let's see, Sweden. That's not what I want. Anyway. Well, that's pulling up. You got problems.
Yeah. Of course, there's going to be assimilation problems, and I'm really not trying to get into any sort of, sitting on a soapbox talking about, superiorities over cultures, one over the other. Not trying to get into that at all. We're just trying to paint the picture that it's not as simple as it looks on paper. And of course that next question arises, well, then what are we supposed to do about it? Or what are they supposed to do about it? I mean, again, we agree, I'm pretty sure most people watching would agree, that if your country is enveloped in war and you want to get out, you should get out. But at the same time, I don't want to put it that way. I'm just saying that this is never going to cause problems, and you need to find ways in order to solve said problems. Obviously, assimilation is more on the part of the people coming in than it should be on the people who are already there. For me, I try to compare it to as, if you invite someone to your house, obviously you should expect your house rules, right? So if you got someone who's immigrating to a country, you need to respect that country's rules. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. And if you're fleeing to this country because, you're trying to save your family and save yourself, I think you should be able to, extend a gratitude to at least tolerate the differences that's going to arise in the culture clash that's bound to follow.
And I think that most people would agree with us. When you, like you said, when you go to somebody's house, you follow their rules, and it should be the same in any country or culture. If you go there, you are a guest. They took you in. You need to assimilate. I don't mean like give up your entire culture. I mean, that's the great thing about America. Well, back in the day, anyway, not anymore. But they came here to be Americans. But at the same time, they retained their heritage. You would follow Western, or I should say American, traditions. But at the same time, you got to keep your own. So you had kind of this mix. And I think that made a very, very rich society, versus when you have what we have now, where people make demands, for things to be in a certain language, and you just have to cater to them. And like you said, there's just something wrong about that. You're a guest, especially when they're getting that much welfare. That's ridiculous. Especially in Europe. I mean, that's just. But then again, I mean, what are you gonna do? They're. It's all bad. It's all bad. So, I mean, coming from our perspective, though, I guess we should touch bases on private property. Because in a private property society, this kind of situation maybe would have been avoided 100%, but I think the transition would be a little bit better. Because, okay, for instance, we're talking about welfare, right? The people of Germany or Greece or whatever, they're not handing them money. I mean, some of them are, but on the whole, it's government. Government is giving them subsidies. Government's giving them stuff, and as we know, government's using public money to do that. Versus, if a guy has a plot of land, he says, "This is my land." Blah 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 blah. That guy in Greece, the billionaire with the island.
Oh yeah,
there's a guy in Greece, billionaire island. He was gonna house a bunch of refugees on his own dime. There you go. That's the kind of stuff that I look forward to.
But government doesn't, and they shut that down, right?
Right, and that's kind of where, that's exactly what I want to touch on, is the idea of immigration versus forced integration. Back in the Soviet Union, they, when they would take over an area, they had a lot of people who obviously didn't like the Soviet Union. Why? Well, you just took over our country. So what Stalin did was he moved millions of people into that area, basically to reproduce and be pro-Soviet, and it worked very well. That right there is forced integration. When you have a government that says, hey, these people are coming in, sorry, nothing you can do about it. Versus, my billionaire example, where you have a guy or maybe even a group of people who own the land who say, hey, come on in, you can stay here, it's cool, whatever. So there's a very big difference. And like I said, now Europe has a huge culture clash because of it.
I also think having a free market really does help bring an incentive for assimilation because, in the ideal free market situation, the only reason that you're making money is because you are providing a service or product that someone else wants. Mm-hmm. So to an extent, you have to like the person to a degree. So if you have a person who's isolating themselves and saying, I don't like this culture that I'm in, so I'm just going to say, screw you to everybody, they're not going to make it in the marketplace. But if you do have a social safety net in order which they can, I'm not saying they do this, I'm just saying hypothetically speaking, just in theory right now, that If they're not getting along with everyone else, but they're still able to live off of the system, well, that still permits them in order to, not assimilate.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But if they have to assimilate, if they have to assimilate for the sake of them being able to survive in the marketplace, well, there's a perfect incentive for them to do that.
Right, and that kind of falls back into the example that I was using, the time 1920s and 1940s in America. You have Ellis Island. I don't know exactly when Ellis Island closed. Please don't quote me on that. But that's about the time when Ellis Island was pretty big, or just immigration in general. You had a lot of immigrants coming in, and there was no public safety net. There was a huge private safety net. You had fraternities. You had a community of immigrants ready to support you, but at the same time, it was America. You had to follow the culture, the customs, blah blah blah. So if you didn't compete with Americans, you weren't going to go anywhere. Versus nowadays, people come over, oh, here you go, here's a handout, blah blah blah. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. You don't have to integrate. You don't have to speak the language. You could just sit back and just live in your house with your community and just collect checks. And that's, to me, this is just my opinion, that's very detrimental to a society. And I think that contributes to fracturing. Where you just have communities that not only, I should phrase it differently, they just don't want to integrate, and they don't have to. Well, you do your thing, I'll do my thing. That's cool. Is it cool? Is it cool? Shouldn't we be, like you said, free markets? Shouldn't we be buying and selling and trading and being a community?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a great. I'm partial Italian. Italians have great heritage. And you mentioned you're Okinawan?
Yes.
Yes. I remember. That's great culture there, and we bring that to the table. But at the end of the day, we're both Americans.
Yeah.
So
we still have a common ground that we still going to be able to build relationships on top of, rather than trying to be isolated pockets. That's the whole, melting pot thing, or people want to say it's a salad bowl, but you get the picture, right? You can still maintain your own cultural identity, but as long as we still have that common thread line, then all the cogs of the machine work together, and then everything works out fine. But if you give people options in which they can just stay in their own isolated pockets, then now naturally you're going to start having clashes, because no one really has an incentive, other than, the goodness of their heart if they're moral people, sure. But otherwise, you're not going to have an incentive in order to work with other people. That's the great thing about free markets, is that it offers an incentive for cooperation.
Exactly. Yeah. That's it. Case closed. Done. Yeah. And it is what it is, man.
Yeah.
So, tying back to Europe, it's very unfortunate. I can't fathom, the experience people are going on, or what's going on over there. It's terrible. I've seen pictures, but I'm not there, and none of us are. It's bad, and I don't want to get into details of why it got that way, because I think we should save that for another video. Let's just say that there's war, is bad. So honestly, from the bottom of my heart, I feel for these people. I really do. So please don't say that I'm cold and heartless and blah blah blah. I just believe in free markets, and I think the free market can solve this immigration problem, or at least make it a lot better. Yeah. Because hands down, even in a free market society, if you have another nation that's getting nuked or bombed or whatever, you're going to have a lot of immigrants. You're going to have an influx of immigrants, and it probably is going to create a disturbance. But in my opinion, and our opinion, I think that's safe to say, the free market would be a lot better than what we have right now, which is basically forced integration, where you have a government that's forcing you to accept people who honestly have no incentive to accept you. So,
and that cuts both ways.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Both ways. So, yeah.
Alrighty. You got anything else?
No, I couldn't pull up that Sweden thing. Sweden, it was #1 in Europe. I don't know if it's #1 in the world, but I can't seem to find it up.
All right.
So just know it's creating a culture clash. There's a huge culture clash going on right now, and I'm not going to speculate on who's right or who's wrong right now, but let's just say it is what it is. You have two cultures clashing, and yeah, it is what it is.
Alrighty, thank you so much for watching us rant about immigration and so many different tangents. That was a little fun thing we did. Alrighty, so hope to see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in.